Hey everybody. So better late than never. With lots of grace, I have been allowed to submit my discussion post for chapters 7 and 8. So I'm very late. Um, but Dr. Gilliam was very gracious to give me some extra time. We went to Florida for a week, and I've been playing catch up ever since. And I'm gonna try. I made myself some notes. So I'm gonna try to keep this between 5 and 6 minutes. Um, so what I wanted to do, kind of give you a little outline. First, I want to just talk about some highlights regarding high performance work systems. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about systems theory and some things that stood out to me um, from the readings. Then I wanted to make sure I specifically answered the questions in the prompt and give you kind of my theoretical lens that I'm using to consider this video and the questions. And then I'm going to kind of identify what laws I feel like were broken and where I think bias came into play here. Um, and identify what some concerns and issues were in the situation, and then make a couple of recommendations. So, first, that I wanted to talk about real quick with high performance work systems. Of course, we noted, or I noted in the book when I was doing the reading, that there were three main concepts that it focused on: performance, systematic effects, and work practices. And then it also talked about HR practices that are high involvement practices and high commitment practices. So the high involvement practices really would focus on redesigning jobs to enhance worker involvement. Um, a lot of focus on skill development of the workers, and then providing incentives for the workers. And then the high commitment practices worked on enhancing employee commitment to an organization, which is really important because that directly comes into play with retention and job satisfaction. And then a question that was posed in the reading in the textbook was how can a work system be improved, and for whom can it be improved? And this was really stood out to me, especially after I read this and then I watched the video and then I went back to read it again. And they talked about abilities, motivation, and opportunities, and I think that was definitely a factor in this scenario, and I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to my response of the video. Regarding systems theory, first of all, I love the video that was included here. I thought he did a great job of breaking down systems theory to make it very understandable and relatable, and especially after reading the textbook for our leadership theory and leadership in organizations classes. The video kind of brought all that together for me. So the first person or theorist that comes to my mind when I'm thinking about systems theories is Mary Parker Follett. I hope I'm not mispronouncing her name. And other theorists that were instrumental in moving the open systems theories into place, leaving those closed systems and moving into an open system theory. And they believed that the workplace was a dynamic system of people and processes, that connect and work together. And then I kind of sum this up to mean, maybe I'll be quoted on this one day. I doubt that, but so I say that you cannot extract the person from the work, and you cannot extract the work from the person. And I think that really sums up systems theories. we bring home to work, we bring work to home, and it really does all ebb and flow and work together. And you can't really, even though you try to create boundaries and have that work-life balance, we really do have to consider that employees bring a lot with them to work, and then they take work home with them, and that's just the way that our brains work, and we have to work really hard to make effort to try and have some separation between the two. But those early theorists really begin to understand that you have to consider the human nature of people and what that means for organizations. And so then I wanted to reference page 113 in the text, where it was talking about in the systems theory. It says an organization and its environment compose a complex interactive system. Complexity, so understood, denotes the degree of diversity in organizational activities and the environments in which the organization is operating. And I think that sums up what those early theorists were beginning to tell employers is that you have to consider the whole person. I also wanted to mention, related to that, the things that are really important with systems theory are the communication, the feedback loop that needs to take place constantly in order to maintain and move forward, the respect that has to be there at every level of the organization, and then also employing or encouraging leadership at all levels. And we learned that from our Northhouse textbook when we were studying adaptive leadership. So for this particular scenario, I wanted to approach it from the psychology theory lens, because I've always been fascinated by psychology. Why people think and act the way they do, and studying that has always been fascinating to me. And the one in particular that I was interested in was the similarity attraction theory, and I think that was definitely at play here with this interview committee. The question that we were asked was, is there rationale for infusing bias in the hiring process acceptable? And I said no. And is there a form of discrimination against the candidate? And I said yes. I felt like there was a form of discrimination against the female candidate, specifically related to her gender and her age. And then there's not a under the federal protected classes, there's not a category for being a mother, but I think that that was definitely a factor in him not wanting to offer the position to her, and I think it was a factor in her wanting to offer the position to the female candidate. So in the video, of course, we all saw that there was a male and a female, both obviously part of the interview committee, and had interviewed two candidates. What I found interesting was that you had a male and a female on the interview committee, and then you had a male and a female candidate. And it was obvious that the male interviewer was interested in the male interviewee, and the female interviewer was interested in the female interviewee. So again, that ties back to what I was talking about a few minutes ago with the similarity attraction theory. I think in that case they were both being attracted to people that were applying for the job that were like them in more than one way. I think there was definitely the opportunity here for unconscious bias to come into play, but there was also obviously some conscious bias at play here too. That, outright the man didn't feel like she was old enough to be able to do the job. He didn't feel like she had enough experience to be able to do the job. And also had an obvious bias against her being female. Let's see, I'm just looking at my notes here real quick. So there was definitely the opportunity for the conscious and unconscious bias to come into play. Only 2 people on the interview committee, so I found that a little odd and concerning, and I know several of you mentioned that in your response. And then there was no clear process or strategy or guideline for reviewing or comparing the candidates. And then I wanted to pose a question that could there also have been the potential for cultural bias or bias related to race and ethnicity? They didn't mention that in the video, but because we had 2 interview committee members that were clearly from different races and different ethnic groups, could that also have been playing into some of their decisions? So the laws that I saw that were broken were obviously directly related to the EEOC, and looking at the protected classes from the federal code. So there was a gender bias regarding her sex. There was an age bias, and then I'd like to add one that is not listed, which was a mother bias. Or family status. So I think that was an unconscious bias that was coming into play. Also, they talked about the male candidate was already part of the organization, and so I think the male interviewer saw that as an opportunity to save some money, time, resources, money with onboarding processes. So he was seeing that as a plus for the organization, where she didn't really see that that was going to be an obstacle or should be an issue. Also, he made a lot of assumptions that were not based on facts, and thought that he should have done a better job of getting some more factual information. And he also made mention, or actually the person that was she wasn't really mediating, but she was, providing a little insight for us. But she talked about the male candidate being in the in group versus the out group, which would be the female that's not already part of the organization. What I felt like the female interviewer did that was right was that she did some additional research on the candidate by looking at her blog post, and that is public information, and the blog post obviously had information that was directly related to her career interests, her research interests. So I thought that was good that she took an opportunity to look at that to get a better idea of what she could bring to the table if they hired her. And then also I thought she was really wanting to embrace diversity in order to advance the organization and serve the needs of the students there. And then also I made a note that hiring a woman supports the affirmative action, which says that there must be proactive measures put into place to hire women and minorities to make up for past patterns of discrimination. So I think that was something that she was trying to do, whether she was aware that she was working within that affirmative action law. I'm not sure, but I did note that about the affirmative action. So related to the similarity attraction theory, I think, obviously the male wanted to hire the male, the female wanted to hire the female. The male wanted to maintain status quo, and the candidate he wanted to hire was already part of that in group. And maybe there were some similarities there with their work ethic, their relationship at work already. Maybe this candidate is someone that had been with the organization for a while, where the female wanted to broaden horizons and bring in someone new from the outside, shake things up a little bit. Then you had the male, who obviously wanted to hire more of a veteran, where the female wanted to hire somebody that was young and that could bring fresh ideas. And so I think both of their wants and needs probably had a direct reflection of their own skills and abilities and work experiences and things like that. So the issue that I wanted to just wrap up here with was that both the hiring committee members had differing perspectives, I felt, of ability, motivation, and opportunities for each of these candidates. I think they each had different ability, motivations, and opportunities, and they saw the candidates having different ability, motivations, and opportunities. So my recommendations would be to establish clear strategic protocol for the pre-interview, which could be a screening, a checklist, questions, conversations, the during interview note taking, and then post-interview debate and discussions. Definitely needed to increase the size and diversity of the candidate selection committee. Should include various genders, various race and ethnic groups. Should be an odd number of people, so someone could break a tie if that was needed, and various age representations. And then I wanted to also mention the study by Brenda Allen that was referenced by Dr. Gilliam, that says we need to be mindful. Employers need to be mindful of their own bias. They need to be proactive in setting aside those biases, and they need to fill their communication toolbox with a repertoire of skills for effective listening and dialogue. And my video went way too long. I hope it uploads, and I will see you all next time.